I'll jump out.
Oh, wait, we have to make sure everybody's okay with that. Excuse me, I'll take that.
The counseling that I do at the schools is more of a secular nature. I have been a school counselor for probably close to 20 years now. I would think that I would be retired, but I've moved a lot. And so I still have a few years to go. And I'm okay with that because I'm not sure I don't feel old enough that I should be retiring yet. So, and the kids really keep me young and engaged. I am in a new position this year, so I'm not in a specific counseling role this year. I am now a program coordinator at Cholla High School. We are one of two schools in all of Tucson that offers an international baccalaureate program, which is a quite advanced program for high school kids to engage in. And I'm now the program coordinator for that. But my background and my passion is still counseling. And even though that's not my job title, I still do a fair amount of counseling with just a smaller population of the school. And so I think one of the things that when Loy and Candace and I were talking that really popped into my head is making sure that if you're a parent raising your kid, if you're a grandparent raising a grandchild or a great grandparent, because I now have that for the first time in my school, a great grandparent has a senior at my high school and then has a middle schooler at another school. And there could be more. I just know of that one in particular. To not be afraid to reach out and ask for help to the school counselors. And so through the years, it's been very dependent on the school that I've been at in terms of how utilized my counseling background is. And so one of the things I really wanted to emphasize to all of you, if you are seeking help for a child who is enrolled in school, kindergarten through 12th grade, is that all school counselors have a mental health type counseling background. That's part of the schooling that we go through. It's part of the hours of internships and externships and all of that we have for our certification. As a school counselor, we have to do a number of, I want to say it's 400 hours as a practicum. And then there's an additional 150 or 200 hours before they go into their practicum. And so there's quite a bit of counseling available within the schools. The other thing to look at is to ask the school counselor. That's always a great place to start. If you just aren't sure where to go for help for mental health type, emotional, social issues with your child or grandchild, is with the school counselor. But one question to also ask them is, does my child's school have a social worker? So like at Cholla High School, we are richly blessed. We have two social workers that are full-time at our school. This is the first year that we've had two of them. In the past, our social worker has had as many as 4 interns, which, quadruples the number of social workers that we have available to work with kids. So that is a resource. I recognize not all schools have that, but it's definitely something to ask your school, your child's school, if they have social workers on staff, because they tend to deal more with the social emotional issues And they are generally, especially at the high school level, they're the ones that run the groups, that run the drug and alcohol groups. They run a girls group or a boys to men group or the GSA group. I mean, they're the ones that tend to run those groups because the school counselors are busy doing a lot of like credit checks and academic counseling and career counseling and that sort of thing. But I think it's important for you to realize that if your child's school doesn't have social workers available, the school counselors can also provide short-term counseling. They can do it in groups if that's something that is needed, or they can provide one-on-one. And that's generally what I did was I would provide short-term one-on-one, generally solution-focused counseling. And I would say for most school counselors, that's the approach, at least at the high school level, that we take. And the reason for that is because most of us, our caseload is a 1 to 500 or more caseload. And so when kids come in, it's very much about, okay, how can we, what's a solution? You're feeling anxious today. What triggered the anxiety? What's happening? What's surrounding that? What can we do? Let me teach you some breathing techniques to help you through that. If it's more severe, then we will even refer them to our social workers so that they can get plugged into one of the groups that the social workers offer once a week for the entire school year, pretty much. So those are some basics, I think, about what's available at the schools. The other thing is that the social workers and the school counselors should have a list of resources available. One of the conversations that Loy and Candace and I had was that there is such a backlog right now in the availability of community services. And that's just, I'm not sure that that's necessarily new. I think it's just more so because of the pandemic and the results of the pandemic. I'd love to say that that's over with, but we have kids that are so anxious ridden right now because of having spent a year to a year and a half at home in their rooms by themselves, totally virtual with everybody, except maybe immediate families. That now that they're back in the schools, we still have a number of kids who wear masks, who double mask even. They are so afraid of bringing something home because they're living with a grandparent or a great grandparent, and they don't want to get a family member ill. And so I would say the main things that we see at the school in terms of what kids are really facing are, first and foremost, the anxiety is probably more severe than I have ever seen it in my 35 plus years in education. And then depression, like true clinical depression. And they are on medications for that, some quite a bit of medications. And so there is that going on as well. We are fortunate in the sense that I think the more severe cases of anxiety and depression, most of those kids, if they have come forward, they are receiving some help. But again, it's probably more frequent than what I have ever seen in the past 35 years. So there definitely is that. I think the group counseling that goes on at the schools is beneficial regardless of whether your child is a kindergartner and going to groups or a senior in high school going to groups. I think there's a camaraderie that is positive depending on the group leader for the groups that can definitely take place and ends up being quite a place of support for the kids. And so, you know, these are things for you when you call on the schools and when you talk to the schools. These are questions to ask. As a school counselor, what kind of counseling services are you comfortable providing? So at Choya, there are four school counselors. Each of them have a different level of comfort in providing social emotional counseling. Some are very comfortable with it. Others are more comfortable with the less, shall I say, touchy-feely parts of counseling and are more comfortable with the more academic and career-related counseling. And so that's something to ask. And it's okay to ask that up front. Because if they say, well, you know, yes, I can provide it, but you hear some hesitation in that, say, well, you know, it's okay if that isn't your strength, or if that isn't where your passion lies in the counseling, would one of the other counselors be willing or able to do that for my child or my grandchild? The other main question would be to ask them, does the school have a social worker? And if so, how can I get my child hooked up with the social worker? Or if there is more, which social worker? And generally, at least at our school, the girls prefer going to the female social worker and the guys prefer going to the male social worker, but there are also times where they work together as well. So like the drug and alcohol counseling that takes place generally is not gender specific. Then the other question would be to say, are there counseling services within the school framework or in the community that you could give me information about? Who can I contact to get on a waiting list or to get an intake started? These are questions that you can ask and should ask the school counselor, I believe. I know that TUSD has a mobile app that is available. All of the school counselors within their offices have a QR code that kids can take their phones in, scan the QR code, sign up for it. Parents and guardians have to approve the child to participate in this, but it's a online chat, and someone is available 24/7 for the kids once they're signed up for it. And so I think that's an excellent tool. Most of our students are more comfortable anyway texting. Their thumbs go like lightning, and they're very comfortable with that. Again, please remember, my focus is more high school. That's what I've been doing the majority of my time. So that's what I know most is that, I guess, age group. I'm going to breathe for a minute because I've talked a lot. Are there any questions, observations? I don't know.
Teri, I know that both of my granddaughters here, now they're in Washington, D.C., are involved with the social workers at their schools. They had a tough transition when they moved out here, and the counselors and social workers together have been absolutely incredible. And it has been a combination of one-on-ones and group. And they're younger. They're both elementary age. So that has been a saving grace, I know, for their parents and for them too, as they navigate finding their way in a whole new school system. So I just want to affirm that those resources are there, and we often aren't so aware that they're doing such a good job.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and Teri, I was just going to follow up on your last question or your last comment and how you contextualized it for high school. For younger kids who don't have a phone yet, and for their parents who are waiting till as long as possible before they get one, would that app? I'm sorry, I'm a little under the weather. Would that app and that chat line be something that it's possible for a parent to work with their child to say, okay, here's a designated time. I'm going to hand you my phone and you can use this chat to talk with someone and type in things? Or are there different kinds of resources that you would recommend for younger kids, maybe middle school or even, elementary?
Oh, I brought my notebook home from work because I know there's no way I can have it all memorized. So the app, the app for the TUSD is called it's Tucson Unified Connect app, and you can download it from the App Store or from Google Play. It is focused on TUSD students, parents, and community members. The app content is available in 7 languages, which I think is pretty fabulous. It's free mental health support through Talkspace and Palo Verde Behavioral Health for TUSD students. And so those are, I mean, that's the Connect app is what that's called.
Okay, I typed that name in the chat just so in case folks wanted to take a look at that.
Is anyone aware of the other school districts? Do they have a Connect app with their name connected to it? Does anyone know?
You would just have to call like Vail. I mean, so our head of secondary counseling used to be a counselor at the Vail School District. But if you just contact the school and ask, the counselors there should know.
I'm just saying, as I'm looking at this screen, I see Vail School District, Catfoot School District, Tanca Verde School District, and TUSD. So it'd be interesting to know if
well-rounded here.
we are well-rounded.
I love
it. So yeah, right. But it'd be good to know if that's a common thread. So that's something for us to look into. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Green, I have a question.
Okay.
I'm Kira with Reach for the Stars nonprofit. So with what you said about anxiety and depression being pretty much the highest that you've seen over the last 35 years, do you feel the same way about like suicide as far as with teens?
I'll be honest with you, I haven't, and maybe it's just my school, because I can only talk about my direct experiences. Since we've been back in person and I was in the counseling position up through May of this year, so the last year and a half we've been back in person, I don't think I had any kids in my office that were indicating any form of suicidal thoughts, ideation, plans, any of that. I know last week, because I was talking to one of our social workers a little bit, letting her know that I had this coming up and if she had any, specific insights. And she was like, no, you pretty much are saying what I would share as well. I know she had one student that came in, semi had a plan. She had to call the guardian. The guardian had to come and pick her up from school. Prior to COVID, I would say I would have 3 to 4 police phone calls a school year where, the kids would come in, they would have a plan. I would call the parents. I would have to call the police to come in, and the police would escort the kids, and the parents or guardians would follow them to the crisis center.
I have a
Also, the police would do an evaluation as well.
on that same token, I've heard a lot of peers of mine saying that their kids are in that, in the high school, middle school range, wanting to, because of COVID, that transition being so hard, wanting to transfer from being in class to online, and a lot of them actually doing that. And so I'm curious if the online, and I don't know if that offers the same, I'm assuming it does, like if they can still go to the counseling and do all that same, have those same.
Yeah, I can only talk about TUSD and in particular Choya, but I think what we offer at Choya is the same throughout TUSD. I mean, I believe it would be pretty consistent. So we have 2 online portals for students. They somewhat disenrolled. It's a weird process. So we have Cole, the Catalina online experience, and that one is truly like the kids are taking their classes through a program called Apex. And there is a teacher that grades the assignments and watches the progress on Apex, and the kids, if they have specific questions about a certain lesson, they can email the teachers. But it's pretty self-paced, I would say, kind of a process. The other one that TUSD has is called TUVA. It's the Tucson Unified Virtual Academy. Those are more like what we went to, and I think what most schools went to in the height of COVID, where the kids logged on to Zoom, they attended classes, a teacher was there, other kids were in the class, much like this kind of a setup. And the teaching is there. I know that TUVA has at least one elementary counselor whose background is social work, a middle school counselor whose background is school counseling, and I believe they have a high school counselor still. I think they started the school year with 2, and one of them left because she got a job in her hometown. She was actually doing it virtually, and she was able to get an in-person job, which was probably good for her. And so, but I believe they have at least one for each of the grade levels. So I know that if they needed to talk to the counselor, there are ways for them to contact them. As far as Cole, I don't know. When I first moved back to Tucson, that was one of the schools that I interviewed with because they were looking for a school counselor to be part of their team. But that was for the kids who were coming on campus part of the time. So I don't know now that I think they're even more virtual than they were before. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Uh-huh. So you said, Candace, that there are representatives from some other school districts. I would love to hear what kind of services are available at their schools, if it's similar.
they're not necessarily representatives. I just know that their children are in those different school districts.
Okay,
So,
okay, got you. At you.
Yeah.
Because I'm always curious how other districts, do things as well. Okay, I see a hand up, Sienna.
Hi there.
Hi.
Yeah, I just have my video off to save my battery, so I am here. Candace sort of led me into maybe an opportunity to make a comment about the Tanca Verde schools,
Okay.
which is where my student is. I'm impressed with how much you're able to offer your students where you are. I don't find that that's been the case consistently over here. And now the junior high has a person who seems to have the time to be able to do a little bit of one-on-one or one-on-two with kids. But I was told firmly at Tanca Verde Elementary that we don't do counseling here. So we needed to seek services, through one of the groups like Pathways or Casa de los Niños, et cetera, which of course have the waiting lists and
waiting
lots
list.
of turnover. So that's kind of a obstacle. But so I feel like, like our ministers are our support. They're a great support for us. I think the kids know that they can go to them, or they're strong role models also.
Mm-hmm. And I would agree with that. I certainly, having grown up in a church and bringing my kids up in churches, the Sunday school teachers became their mentors, and then the youth ministers became their mentors. And those were the people that they went to, good or bad, because none of us are perfect, right? But those became the people that the kids go to. And I think that's equally as powerful of a resource. And, I'm not as familiar with all of the titles within the Methodist church, but, the deacons or the elders or the, other church leaders that are available are also people that I think can be resources for our kids. And I think sometimes we miss a really powerful connection when the more mature members, not elders as in a position, but the elders of the church could mentor some of the youngers of the church. And there's such a wealth of experiences and wisdom and just mentoring that can go on, that I think sometimes that can provide a stabilizing force for our kids as well. And the positive role models, I think, it's so needed. One of the things that we're seeing, and I know it's across the nation and pretty much in some places across the world, because I have connections across the world in education, is that our current ninth graders were sixth graders when the pandemic hit, and they're stuck. So we're seeing behaviors in ninth grade that are very young middle school behaviors. And our high school teachers are going, I did not sign up to be a middle school teacher. It's truly like, and research is starting to come out to confirm what we've been seeing for the last year and a half. Their social emotional growth stopped. It just got stunted because those environments of being at school and being in the classrooms and changing classes and being around lots of kids, whether it's directly taught or indirectly learned, there's so much growth that takes place in those middle school years that lead to maturity and being able to handle what's expected of high school kids. and we're really not seeing much of that right.
Interesting.
Not like everybody, obviously, but I mean, like for instance, just today, and I only know this because I was sitting in with administrators at the end of the day. Their day started with some sort of a sexual escapade. High schools are not perfect. They're high school kids, right? With hormones raging. Started with that, and it ended with a fight. You know, but we're seeing more of the aggressive behavior than we have in the past. And they just don't know what to do with everything that's going on developmentally inside of them. And so TUSD has adopted a social emotional learning curriculum, and every school does it a little bit differently. But on Wednesdays, we have about a 40-minute block where teachers are to follow this social emotional learning curriculum. And of course, you know, as in everything else, you have some teachers that are very gung-ho and into it and are amazing at it. And then you have other teachers where that is so outside of their comfort zone that they're like, you just have a study period. And so not everybody is getting the full benefit of it. And obviously the kids who are really benefiting from it are the teachers who, you know, they know how to connect well with kids. They know how to build the relationships. It's in everything we do, even at church. If you can build the relationships with the kids, then classroom management is easier. I mean, it all, you know, seems to fall into place. Susan, you have your hand up.
Well, I'd like to hear, I know, or I'll just say, I know that in the Vail School District, they have, you know, they're constantly trying to improve on, you know, student services and emotional health. So if anybody wants to give us some perspective, you know, on what else, you know, what other schools are offering to help with the anxiety and behavior, and also how we can help. If there are any other strategies that we could employ as we work with our youth. So I really asked 2 questions. Oh, Jenny's got her hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to, I was waiting and just kind of listening before I jumped in. So my name's Jenny Graves. I work in the Vail School District, and I work in the Community Connections and Student Supports Department. This department actually was just established within the past year and a half, and it has grown exponentially with all that we are offering. And my piece is I'm actually building a mentoring program through the school district. And we actually have what you talked about, the SEL, the social emotional learning. That's a big part of what we do. We have a lead counselor that works in our department who oversees all the counselors. And we have grant funded counselors in K through 8 now, rather than just counselors at the high school level. And just some incredible, you know, things happening. And but there's always something new, right? There's always something new that we want to provide to the students. We're hoping that this mentoring program will take off, because a lot of what you were saying, Teri, and I've heard other people talk about, just having those mentoring relationships is so key to some of these students. And the mentoring program that we're starting is for disengaged students, because kind of like what you were saying, all these different issues, just students are they were disengaged pre-COVID, but COVID just kind of exacerbated, you know, it made it worse, because I feel like students were very disconnected because of technology already. So just kind of made it worse. So we're hoping to come alongside some students that are disengaged and have a mentor in their life that re-engages them and gets them connected at their school, makes them feel like they belong. And that's kind of my piece of where I'm coming from the Vail School District.
Okay. That explains. I saw you doing a lot of head nodding, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, she knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I'd like to give feedback too, because I'm one of those
Yeah,
students that just
I
kind of sits
appreciate
there and
that.
all.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
And Terry, Courtney has had a hand up as well.
Oh, yes, Courtney.
She called on you.
Okay.
Honey.
All right, ask your question.
Oh, Terry, what or how are you able to involve parents when it comes to your students' behavior or lack of involvement in the schools?
So I don't want to be super negative, but the apple tends to not fall too far from the tree. And so for the most part, I would say that the kids who we have the most severe discipline issues with are also the kids whose parents are least involved in their lives. And I don't know if others of you, have seen that sort of pattern as well. Choya is it's a great school. I can't imagine being at any other school. Actually, I think it's a great fit for me. And we have some truly amazing kids. In my 5 years there, I've had one negative interaction with a student. I think that's pretty phenomenal. I realize I'm not in the classroom every day, so I'll put that caveat out there. But I still feel like that's pretty phenomenal for a high school of 1,700 plus kids. We work very hard to try and get parents involved. There's the technology, the use of technology grew exponentially, like literally like that in a month and a half to 2 months. And many of our parents are not native English speakers. Most of it, I would say, well, we have about 95% of our student population is of a Hispanic, Latinx background. And I would say out of that 95%, at least 50% of them, the parents are monolingual. And so we have, our office staff, the secretarial office staff are all bilingual, which is huge help for me because I am not bilingual. And so if my approach is, as soon as one of my students is brought to me or an issue is brought forward, I don't hesitate to call the parent. And I do what I can to get them involved. And I would say, again, I've probably only ever had 1 or 2 parents say to me, you know what? They're almost 18, they're on their own. Most of my parents are so thankful that someone from the school took the time to reach out. And in my very limited Spanish, if I call home and the parent or guardian answers in Spanish, I'm like, oh, un momento, por favor. Yo voy ayuda. And that's probably not even saying it correctly, but they giggle and they go, okay, gracias. And I go get someone to come in and help me on the phone. And so when I am able, because I'm not necessarily calling because of discipline, I draw as a counselor, I draw a pretty firm line on if this is a disciplinary phone call, admin makes that phone call. If it's social emotional, I'm happy to make the phone call, but not before the discipline part is taken care of. Because it's such a fine line, and the kids need to know that the counselor is the helper, not the disciplinarian. Yeah, But we have family engagement committees that try and get parents involved. We are doing more on campus extravaganza events, trying to get parents involved. It's tough. A lot of our parents work out in the, they work nights out in the, at the casinos, because the Cholla boundary is one of the biggest ones in TUSD. And so many of our parents work the casinos or the mines or different places. And a lot of the parents aren't allowed to have their phones on when they're at work. And so sometimes it's hard to get them. Yes.
So I guess on the parent thing, I have children, or have one now, one's graduated, but in the Vail School District. And first I'll say that the Vail School District, at least the schools that my children have been in, have been great for counseling. Because one, I have been a parent who has been disconnected from my children when they have had needs. And so my elementary child, who's at Acacia, needed some counseling, and they were on it. I mean, they just took him in, did counseling with him, did group counseling, and I thought that was really awesome, and it really truly helped. However, I would say that I think when it comes to some of this stuff, I think that's when it takes some of the outside resources, which is why I created Reach for the Stars nonprofit, because sometimes I think the family might need something that is outside of, like you said, outside of school hours, outside of the time frames, because a lot of times some of the families don't know necessarily what they need, or they don't even know that they have a problem, or that their kids are even having a problem. Over the course of the last few years, I've come in contact with a lot of youth volunteers that have said, one, I tell my parents exactly what they want to hear so that they don't think I have a problem. And two, I do the bare minimum, but I'm depressed. I have anxiety, I have all these problems, but my mom will never know because I don't want her to know.
Right.
So that's why we do what we do, but we use astronomy, and we try to do something for an alternative coping mechanism to try and get the family to come with them, because we want it to be fun. And I know, from my personal experiences, what I did to my children, because like you said, it rolls downhill. So the kids are always going to have and get the brunt of what has happened.
Mhm.
And they don't even know why. But I think that's the outside resources. And if we can all work together, then we can all have that rounded benefit for the children, because it's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I agree. Sienna, did you have something more you wanted to say? Your hand is raised. Nope. Okay. One of the other things that, while you were talking, Kira, that I don't know why it triggered it, but one of the other increases that I've seen at Cholla, I'm sure you've seen billboards and things around town, but Youth on Their Own, we have more kids, Yodo kids, than we've ever had before. So they're couch surfing, or they are living with an extended family member, generally sharing a room with, 2 or 3 other kids, or things like that. That, some of it is parents or grandparents, whoever their guardian was, has been deported. And so now they're living with an aunt or not. We have it's that number, at least at the high school level. Hopefully it's not at middle school and elementary school as well, but at the high school level, it's astounding to me how many Yodo kids we have at Cholla High School. And one of the things that I tell the kids, or I used to, and I still do, because even though I'm with a different slightly different group of the kids at the school now, I've got quite a few Yodo kids that are in the International Baccalaureate program. I have kids with severe health issues. These kids are, I don't know how they do it. They come to school. It's, for most of them, that is their safe place to be. It's where they can get their 2 to 3 meals a day, because at Choya we're a Title I school because of the population and the income, and so they can get breakfast, lunch, and an afternoon snack before they leave. They just overcome so much, and they still strive, and they see education as their way out of the cycle that they've been in. And that truly, that just keeps me going. And I see what they do, and many of the kids are working. They're going to school full-time, taking college level classes, and they're working 20 to 40 hours a week on top of it, because they're trying to help their family members, their parents or guardians, pay some of the bills, or they're paying their own bills. And so they're paying for their car, they're paying for their food, they're paying for, their insurance, like all of those things. It's those kids truly are my heroes. Yes, Candace.
Unmute. So one of the things I'm seeing, and that this would be as a church leader working with youth, and I'm guessing I'm not the only one, but it just seems like our families are so overbooked, and kids are so uberly involved in everything, that I don't know that very many are taking time to process how they're feeling, or what's going on in their lives. I mean, it's just one frantic activity after another. Have you seen that has become an issue, or is it just something I'm overly concerned about, but that's not a real problem? But I see parents that look like they're at the end of their rope, let alone the kids. And, how can we, as people walking alongside parents with kids, maybe be supportive or help, or be present? Or am I just not seeing the right thing?
No, I think there definitely is that element as well, because if you're busy, then you don't have to stop and deal with what's happening, right? You don't have to, one of the things that I tell kids, and when parents come in, I tell them, I say, it's okay to sit with the pain, and it's okay to sit with the emotions. It's not comfortable. It's very uncomfortable to do that. But it's okay to sit with that. And you can only sit with that when you stop. It's easy to stay busy. And I've told kids, last year when my dad was sick and he was dying, and I knew that he was dying, my saving grace was I had work to go to, because I was busy. I didn't have to, it was there, but it didn't have to be here all day, every day. And so I understand the busyness, but you need to take time to stop, and you need to take time to sit with it. And, our kids, they've lost a lot. Some of our families have lost grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, parents. I have one student is a sophomore, I think, this year, and in the course of a month, grandma died, mom died, and then dad died. And the town that she grew up in, Waco, Texas, the family that was remaining sold the farm. She had to leave the school district that she had been with her entire life and moved to, where are we? Tucson. Sorry, I almost said Farmington. Moved to Tucson to a school of over 1,700 kids. And by the end of the school year, you know, I kept pretty close tabs on her, and she made the honor roll. And I'm like, how in the world have you done that? And she goes, I just keep busy and I keep saying, I want to make mom and grandma and dad proud. You know, so it's, again, our kids have gone through a lot, and I think helping to teach them, again, this is where some of the mentoring can come in, right? Teaching them the coping skills to deal with all that's gone on, because there's so much that's gone on. And helping, I think, also teaching parents coping skills and parenting skills. You know, that might be something for the church to offer, our, you know, with the youth ministers and things like that, is actual parenting classes. Because I think maybe not so much in the church setting, but I don't know that. But that's something that I definitely see a lack of, is parents being parents. They're wanting so badly to be best friends, and that isn't the role of the parent.
So, oh, go ahead, Jenny.
No, you go ahead.
Well, my question might actually be something that could be a whole other talk, because it would have to do with kind of parenting in this new economy. But I've had some recent experience working in a call center, and the wages at the call center are a few dollars above Arizona state minimum wage. Most of the folks in the group that I work with are persons of color of various cultural backgrounds, and their situations are, you know, they're always talking about their kids and how they're not satisfied with what they can do for their kids, because as soon as they leave the call center, they're working for DoorDash, or they're heading over to Safeway to work a third shift over there. And so I think part of the frustration that parents feel isn't, you know, with the teachers or the resources of even the school. It's like you said, I mean, we're not allowed to have our phones at work either. So if, you know, I couldn't make a call if I wanted to. But there is this sense of when the economy doesn't provide livable regular jobs, right? I mean, this is a Bernie Sanders point and made long ago. Then people have to, you know, it's a gig economy. They have to put it together. They have to piecemeal it. And especially with jobs that none of them individually will provide benefits. So they're having to, you know, juggle that around too, and just to bring in cash in the door. They know they're not there for their kids. They know that they don't have the FaceTime. They don't have the presence. They know that there are gaps. They know that the schools are taking up the slack. They know their kids are under stress and having to parent themselves in a lot of ways. But they don't see any alternatives, because even though, you know, good jobs are hard to find, you know, unemployment's low because there's a lot of part-time jobs that people need to fill. Those jobs are out there, and you could piece those together as people are doing, but that doesn't necessarily, you know, solve this particular problem in the way that the parent would like to solve it for themselves or for their family. And so I think, and they're feeling like, okay, I'm not sure, you know, how to get beyond it. It's a kind of survival mode. The pandemic has changed a lot of industries. Artificial intelligence is changing a lot of professional jobs. And so there's going to be great disruption, great transformation about what these positions will even look like in the next 10 years. And people are they're just trying to get through the next month, 3 months, 6 months to a year, and hope their kids make it home from school safe and that they learned something and didn't get in trouble. You know, so I hate to say that we've set our expectations low as parents, But sometimes when folks are in a situation like the pandemic has, put us all in, it is a day-to-day kind of reality.
Mhm. I agree 100%. The trauma that our families are living in is so severe, and we were made for fight or flight for a minute or two, right? We weren't meant for this to be a constant state of being. And for many of our families, that is where they are. That's where they live. Yeah. Well, I don't have more. I've pretty much exhausted, my knowledge. I'm happy to stay on if there's more conversations to be had. I mean, this is one of those topics. Our families, they need us. And so I appreciate all of you being here, and know that you too are a resource to the families. It isn't always the counselors or the teachers or the ministers, or, we all, I used to sort of giggle at the saying, it takes a village, but it truly does take a village for some of our kids, and we are the village, and so I think being real with kids, you can't beat that. And just being there, and when you're at church, if you see a kid and they're not smiling, go up and say, hey, what's up? Be a dork, and it's okay to be dorky, and it doesn't matter what your age is, and they'll be like, who are you? Stranger danger. I don't know. Oh, wait, we're at church, is it? Kind of thing. But, all of us can be mentors to anybody who is younger than us. And, the thing, when I talk to my two kids who are now in their 30s about church, it isn't the doctrine. It isn't, those sorts of things, the sermons. It isn't, sorry, Candace, it isn't those things they remember. What they remember are the relationships, and the people they remember are the adults who took the time to get to know them. And those are still the adults they have on their Facebook. Not that they use Facebook much, but those are the people and the things that they remember from church in terms of their positive experiences. And so I guess I leave that. I think that's a great place to leave with, is to know that as members of Desert Sky, you all have the opportunity to reach and have positive impact on kids.
Thank you, Terry. I'd also just like to thank the folks who are not necessarily connected with Desert Skies for joining us as well, and for the services that you give and support to families, and to you, Terry, and to all of our counselors. As a praying church, I hope that we can hold all of you in prayer as often as possible, as we figure out what it is, how it is that we can better come alongside our families and students. Yeah.
I also want to thank folks who put comments in the chat. Very much appreciate your feedback and your insights there too. And then for anyone we haven't met who may be watching this recording, we appreciate your taking the time to view it, and you can certainly reach out to the Desert Skies leadership on our website, desertskiesumc.org, if you would like to contact us about anything that you've heard in this presentation, with questions or conversations or suggestions. And Dr. Green, we are so thankful for your generosity of knowledge and expertise and wisdom to be with us tonight to share. Just a heads up, next week on Wednesday at 6 p.m. same time, but Wednesday the 25th will be our next speaker. And that is Karen Reynolds, who is an integrated therapist at Escalera Health. And she also, speaking of multiple jobs, works as a mental health therapist at the Pima County Jail. And so working with an older population of folks at Escalera, as well as incarcerated individuals, her topic is going to be on mental health challenges of isolation. And in particular, looking at how isolation itself is challenging mental health, but how we can also challenge back isolation too. And so the kind of two-way street to that. And so that will be her talk. And of course, you're all invited to return again next Wednesday at 6 p.m., same link. Invite anyone else who you think may benefit from the conversation. But again, Dr. Green, we are in your debt this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Oh, that was fun.
Sure
This is a great group. This was a great group. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody's input too. It's always good for me to hear what's happening in other places. So I love it.
Well, you're welcome to come back next week too, Terry.
Okay. We'll see.
Teri, where is OSA?
Yeah, Mom.
Where is OSA?
Melissa is in another part of the house with Maura.
She's very quiet.
Yes. I ran her really hard in the hour that I had at home before this started. So
Some pet therapy going on there, huh?
Yeah.
it helps keep me sane.
Well, thanks again, everyone. Have a safe and restful
Oh, you
night.
can't see us.
Blessings in all that you do.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. God bless.